As a former true love waiter and a newly lawfully wedded wife, I felt some type of way when Chandler Moore and his wife were getting a ton of hate for posting a picture of sis throwing it back at their wedding. So it got me thinking, what other ways has purity culture ruined Christian women's sex lives? And what can we do about it? Welcome back. If you haven't already, go ahead and click that subscribe button and click the notification bell to know whenever I upload. Let's get into this video. So let's start this discussion with what's purity culture anyway? According to a Gospel Coalition article, purity culture is the term often used for evangelical movement that attempts to promote a biblical view of purity, according to 1 Thessalonians 4 verses 3 through 8, by discouraging dating and promoting virginity before marriage, often through the use of tools such as purity pledges, symbols such as purity rings, and events such as purity balls. So to make a long story short, purity culture, or the purity movement, started in the early 90s when AIDS and teen pregnancy was on the rise, and the evangelical church was scrambling to try to figure out something that they could put into place to combat it. Then in 1992, a youth ministry consultant at Lifeway Christian Resources named Richard Ross presented the theme of True Love Waits as a possible Christian sex education campaign. 4 years later, Joshua Harris published a book called I'm Kissing Dating Goodbye that introduced the idea of courtship instead of dating, which is basically that within this courtship, it would be under the authority of the parents and the guidance of the parents instead of the people actually in the courtship. Hey, Editing Victoria here. Joshua Harris actually went and recanted the whole book and wrote a new one, talking about how he survived I Kiss Dating Goodbye because he doesn't believe what he wrote in the original book. So in this view of courtship, the pure girls would be under the authority of their fathers until they got married, and then they'd be under the authority of their husbands.
That is disgusting. Ew.
Both girls and boys were supposed to stay pure and abstain from sex. But in this sense of purity, it also took into account avoiding lustful thoughts. And so it ended up becoming the girls not just being in control of their own purity, but also being responsible for making sure that they aren't contributing to the lustful thoughts of their male counterparts.
That's suspicious. That's weird.
So here's the issue. If you haven't noticed already, this sense of purity movement was built on a very misogynistic foundation. It basically taught young women that they were the object of sexual desire and not the owners of it. By teaching young women this, it creates a whole slew of issues, even into marriage. I had posted an Instagram reel about my struggle with pornography and how God delivered me from it. I also post a video here on my channel, so if you want to watch it, it'll be up here in the cards. But I posted it on Instagram, and a young lady messaged me, and she was thanking me for sharing the fact that I was struggling with pornography, because it's pretty much seen as a male issue in the church. So women are struggling in silence and suffering in silence with this issue, because coming forth and asking for help as a woman comes with a lot more shame and condemnation and judgment than if a man were to ask for help. The gender scale is rarely balanced when we talk about sex and lust in the church. If we indulge in sexual sin, women are seen as dirty while men are seen as lost. And after so many years, conferences, sermons of being compared to a used piece of gum that your future husband wouldn't want to touch because you aren't a virgin anymore, you start to think that that's all you're worth. As if God can cleanse you of all the other sins, but sexual sin is uncleansable. Imagine trying to have sex when your entire life has been based on staying away from it and thinking that sex is dirty.
No, don't touch me there. This is my no square. No, don't touch me there. This is my no square.
What are you doing? You ready?
You're no square, dog. Yay! Ah!
No one will want to have sex with their husband when their entire fate of their salvation was riding on it for their whole life up until this point. Now, that aside, I'm gonna try not to be flagged by YouTube when saying this. Now, take into account the effects of purity culture as it pertains to our culture, like the letter R, if you catch my drift, and being SA'd. You got me? I'm trying not to get this video taken down. If a woman is a victim of SA, the thought that comes to most people's minds is, well, what was she wearing? As if that has any basis on why she was SA'd in the first place. By viewing women, or being taught to view women, as the object of sexual desire, and therefore causing her SA, then what responsibility is left for the perpetrator to have over his own perversion and therefore misconduct?
Well, just as I thought, trash.
So I didn't just come on here to talk about purity culture and just complain about it and all that kind of stuff, because I'm married now, so it is what it is. But here's some solutions that I have for the church today. For one thing, we need to stop teaching a list of do's and don'ts, because we are under grace. We need to teach grace and not the law. And this is a very unpopular opinion for most people, but the church shouldn't tell me what I should do and shouldn't do with my body. But what the church does have the power to do and has the opportunity to do is to teach me what God feels about me, to teach me what God sees in me, how he sees me, and then trust that my relationship with God will fuel my desire to be pure as worship to him. Not necessarily because I will get in trouble for having sex before marriage, or not because he'll stop loving me if I have sex before marriage, but because he loves me so much, so I want to stay pure for God. Not for my future husband, but pure as a sense of worship to God. Also, we need to teach young people about sex before the internet does. Our kids are going out there into the world uninformed and curious because we don't want to talk about anything except for abstaining from sex. If we just teach a do not, then for those who find themselves in that situation, they'll have absolutely no knowledge of what to do. And that's dangerous. That's an STD and a pregnancy waiting to happen. We need to teach the anatomy of sex, like the physical science of sex, and STDs and contraception within the church. Because then we can tack on the purpose of sex and the beauty of sex within marriage. We can talk about the spiritual side of sex as well as the physical side of sex, so that our kids don't have to separate the two. Sex is good, and God created sex within marriage. So why should we say that sex is bad and sex is dirty, and then expect a young lady who now is engaged to be married to just snap on her sexual desire that she's been pressing down her entire life? It's not possible. Lastly, we need to keep the sex conversations co-ed. I know a lot of people might come in the comments and go off on me for this, but hear me out. By separating the girls and the guys, the boys and the girls really, to talk about sex and their parts, it continues to make the opposite taboo. So if I'm a girl learning about what it means to be a girl having sex, then I don't learn anything about what it means for a guy to have sex. And so that entire avenue is completely taboo to me. It's taboo, it's confusing, it's scary, it's unknown. By having a co-ed and teaching a solid, cohesive, one message about sex that's not based on gender, you're going to take the taboo out of sex, and therefore you're going to take the intrigue out of it and the temptation. If it's a normal conversation for a young person to talk about, then when it comes to somebody at school snickering about the female anatomy or the male anatomy, they can say, oh, well, that's just how we're built. That's how God made us. And when we're married, we're able to join together and become one by using sex. And if I don't want to become one with another person that I'm not married to, then I'm not going to have sex with them. See how that makes sense? Instead of just telling somebody don't have sex. Rules without relationship equals rebellion. That's all I have for you today. Thank you all for joining me, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.